This somehow feels like a massive betrayal. If you've seen Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, or have already read some of Tolkien's books, and you're like, oh geez, I sure wanted to know more about this world. But you're also like, bruh, there's so many books, I don't know where to start. Then allow me to guide you through Middle Earth. Today I even put out like my elvish outfit. I don't know, the sleeves kind of say elvish to me. If by any chance you watched the Hobbit trilogy for lack of better judgment, please read The Hobbit. It's a children's book, short and easy to read. You get to know more about Bilbo, which is me. I'm a grumpy old man trying to enjoy a meal without anyone bothering me. My suggestions will not be in chronological order. The Hobbit goes first, as I think it will add a different dimension to The Lord of the Rings to enrich your experience. Granddaddy Tolkien, yes, Granddaddy, wanted the story to be one book, except the publisher was like, sure, but we'll divide them into 3 anyway. If you ever want to watch a YouTube channel with more useless facts, subscribe. The Hobbit was successful on its own, but The Lord of the Rings is the undoubted masterpiece in Tolkien's work. Even though he had set up Middle-earth in The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings solidified it, establishing tropes that became classics of fantasy. Of course, the tropes had been used before Tolkien, but he certainly boosted their popularity. Many fantasy writers have been taking these tropes and making them their own. The elves and dwarves, the Dark Lord, and the wise wizard with a long grey beard. Robert Jordan does homage to many of the tropes in the Wheel of Time series, deliberately taking the beginning of The Lord of the Rings and making it more human, as he said it. In the first chapters of The Eye of the World, I tried for a Tolkien-esque feel without trying to copy Tolkien's style. Some authors consciously avert the Tolkien-esque tropes, but even books like A Song of Ice and Fire have Tolkien's mark on them, like The Dragons, for example. Especially if you're a fantasy writer, I feel like The Lord of the Rings is a book you actually need to read. It's one of those you can't really escape. Endure the 3 descriptions. It'll be worth it, promise.
Errrm, don't be hasty.
If you're crazy like me and want more from Middle-earth, proceed to read the Silmarillion. The Bible, the holy sacred text. All you need to know about the world is here. Do you want to know the gods of the world? Meet Iluvatar and his babies. How did they make Middle-earth? Who are the baddies of all time? Morgoth is your boy. Thought Sauron's rings were the first cursed objects. Here are the Silmarils, crafted by Fëanor, an elf who was kind of crazy for jewelry. To put it as succinctly as possible, the Silmarillion is all of the tales in Middle-earth before the Lord of the Rings started, in comparison to the previous books, which are regular fiction and the tip of the iceberg. This is basically a history book. You'll recognize references from other books. In The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn mentions Beren and Luthien to Nuviel, and even attributes Luthien's nickname to Arwen. Funnily enough, both Arwen and Aragorn descend from Beren and Luthien, having a somewhat similar love story. They keep it all in the family. At least, Tolkien was more discreet with his incest than Martin. No matter if you read a lot or not, this one might seem like torture. To keep focused, I read the book out loud, which I normally do when I have difficulty focusing. There's also the audiobook, that is a viable option too.
From the theme of Iluvatar to a great music, and a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies woven in harmony.
Do whatever suits you best. After reading the Silmarillion, you'll be able to pick and choose which books you'd like to know more about, since it has all of the tales in Middle-earth up until the War of the Ring. Based on my experience, I fell in love with the Silmarils, Beren and Lúthien's story, so I bought the book and read it first. So this is where I'd like to give more agency back to you, because I feel like anyone who reads the Silmarillion, which is the biggest challenge, will be able to pick up any book they choose. In case you're still confused about what to pick up after the Silmarillion, I'd like to point out what some of these other books are. Tolkien died without publishing half of these books, and that responsibility fell to the shoulders of Christopher Tolkien, his son, who passed away a couple of years ago. Many of these books have been published with an academic context to them. That means that it not only has the narrative side of it, but also has a critical commentary on it. These notes on the narrative are great to understand how Tolkien worked as an author and where he took his inspiration from. The light academic approach ones are Beren and Lúthien, Unfinished Tales, and The Fall of Gondolin. Unfinished Tales might be a good one to pick up before the Rings of Power show to know better what happened in that time and places like Númenor. My personal favorite is undoubtedly Beren and Lúthien, possibly my favorite romance fantasy story. It's such a big story in his mythos that Tolkien and his wife have Beren and Lúthien on their graves. The ones with a heavier academic approach are The History of Middle-earth and The Nature of Middle-earth. In these, Christopher Tolkien gives us insight into his father's creative process, including earlier versions of the stories previously mentioned. And the last one is Nature of Middle-earth, edited by Carl F. Hostetter, fitting right in with the history of Middle-earth by having what is believed to be the last of Tolkien's unpublished works. In my opinion, these are mostly useful for writers. Like, if you really love Tolkien and you're like, I need to know how this man thought, these are perfect for that. But if you're a casual reader, I wouldn't really recommend it because of the academic approach side to it. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, you know? It's worth mentioning that, of course, my reading guide is based on my experience loving Middle-earth. When I was a little bean, I saw the trilogy and I still love the trilogy, not the Hobbit trilogy, fuck's sake. So technically this is my first full video of me fangirling over Tolkien and Middle-earth. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.